welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. I have a spectacular guest to speak with today. Nancy Pearcey is the author of Love Thy Body, answering hard questions about life and sexuality. But she is a prolific author. Her earlier books include The Soul of Science, Saving Leonardo, How Shall We Live, and Finding Truth. And by the way, her books have been translated into 9 languages. She's a professor, scholar in residence at Houston Baptist University, and she was highlighted as one of the top 5 women apologists by Christianity Today, was also hailed in The Economist as, quote, America's preeminent evangelical Protestant female intellectual. Yes, folks, I have an actual intellectual on the program. Well, she's not the first, but she won't be the last. But she is one of my favorites. Welcome to the show, Nancy Pearcey. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sam. It's good to see you again.
It is good to see you, although under a little bit more dire circumstances now. Your book, which really kind of broke some ground, Love Thy Body, which really dealt with the whole transgender movement and transsexualization, and also the sexualization of children, if I recall. It's moved into hyperdrive now. So I wanted to ask you some questions about it. Let's start with, why did you write the book?
Why I wrote the book? Well, these are certainly the cutting edge moral issues of our day. The book covers abortion, euthanasia, homosexuality, transgenderism, and even the hookup culture. These are all related. It turns out that they all share a common worldview, and we will be able to respond to them much more effectively if we recognize that they are driven by a common worldview. So many people want to get involved in politics, which is good, but they tend to deal with each issue one by one, bits and pieces. And in Love Thy Body, what I show is that you have to deal with these things with an underlying worldview that actually is the same for all of these issues. It makes it much easier, actually, for us to be involved politically and socially and with our friends and neighbors and family when we can dig down to the underlying worldview and show that there is a single worldview driving all of these issues.
Right. And actually, I make that argument in politics also. And of course, all of these issues are now part of our political sort of landscape: abortion, transgender, all of them. And now, in fact, I have to include critical race theory, which stems again from this same sort of worldview ideology. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I believe that you're seeing a common thread as basically a rejection of God.
Well, it's also a rejection of the body, because issues like abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism all have to do with the body. And that's why the book is titled Love Thy Body, because the whole point is that your body is part of who you are, and whether you reject your body or not ends up being the core issue. It's most obvious with transgenderism, because transgender activists actually argue explicitly that your body is not part of your authentic self, that your biological sex has nothing to do with who you are, that it's all in terms of your feelings, your mental life, your physical, your desires, and so on. In other words, children down to kindergarten are being taught these days that your body does not tell you who you are. There was an article in the news not long ago where a young girl, first grade, Sam, was coming home and telling her mom, my teacher is telling me, if you have boy parts, that doesn't mean you're a boy. If you have girl parts, that doesn't mean you're a girl. And she was literally asking her mom, she asked her mom, please take me to a doctor so we can find out what I really am. And the reason it was in the news is that the parents were taking the school to court for emotional distress for their child. But this is where it's come down to. Did you notice that Blue's Clues, very a very wonderful child's program that my children used to watch when they were young, has now just recently, a few days ago, come out with an animated series on Gay Pride, in which they said they were celebrating all the different types of families, as they put it. They're talking to children, so they don't talk about the adults, they talk about families, and families can have two mothers or two fathers, or transgender parents, or drag queen parents, or binary parents, and it's all a family. The point is, it's being down to the very young children. The transgender ideology is telling them your body is not part of who you are. All that matters is your feelings. And so that's why in Love Thy Body, I really concentrate on the ideology as it appears to the body. In other words, the secular liberal view says your body has no dignity, no significance, and therefore you can simply override it with your own feelings. There's a very well-known public intellectual who defends lesbianism just this way. She's Camille Paglia. I know you've probably read Camille Paglia.
Sure.
Because a lot of Christians actually read her, because she's a little bit of an iconoclast in terms of being a feminist and a lesbian, because she denies that sex is just a social construction. She says, no, humans are a sexually reproducing species. Nature made us male and female. So how does she defend being lesbian then? She says, and this is a direct quote, she says, why not defy nature? After all, God, not fate, has given us this body. We have absolute claim to our flesh and may do with it whatever we want. So essentially, that's the underlying ideology. We have claim to our flesh, we have claim to our bodies, and can do with them whatever the mind wants, whatever the feelings wants. And if it contradicts your body, that doesn't matter. So essentially, that's what we're up against. It's actually a denigration of the body.
So it's interesting because on the flip side, you would say that she was sort of applauding the use of her body in any way that she chose. And as a conservative, I would say, well, she has the right to do what she wants with her property, which is her body. But at the same time, when this branches into transgenderism and the denial of the body to the point of self-mutilation, that's when it starts to get dicey. And when they then go and talk to children and talk children into this, it's really a disease of the mind in a sense. When you choose to hurt yourself, right? That used to be considered crazy, illogical, something that needed to be addressed. And now we're actually encouraging it.
It is illogical. And I should mention that in Britain, their equivalent of the Supreme Court, they call it the High Court, has now come out saying that children under 16 and under cannot simply go to a gender clinic and get cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and surgery. And it happened because a young girl who went to the largest gender clinic in Britain, and underwent all of both cross-sex hormones and surgery, double mastectomy, and sued the clinic later. In other words, later she discovered that her surgery didn't solve her problems, and that in fact she had been fast-tracked into surgery and hormones. And so she actually sued the clinic. She's only about 23 now, but she's now detransitioned.
Right.
And she won her case. This is amazing. She actually won her case. And so the High Court has said children 16 and under can no longer simply cannot be fast-tracked into hormones and surgery without a court order. So you're absolutely right. In one sense, you would say, if it was just a matter of personal, private decisions, that would be one thing, but it's not. It's a matter of going to a gender clinic and changing your body to conform with your mind. And my argument in Love Thy Body is, who here is on the side of the value and dignity of the body. It turns out that the secular liberal view actually has accords no dignity or value to the body. And surprisingly, it's the Christian conservative view that does. And most people wouldn't think that. They think, oh, Christians, they don't value this world. They say this world doesn't matter. All that matters is the spiritual realm. And it turns out it's the opposite. It's the Christian that says, no, your body is a product of divine creation. God made you this way. I give lots of personal stories in the book. And one of them, for example, is a young woman who lived as a lesbian for many years and today is married to a man. These days you have to say that, married to a man, and has 2 children. And she said what changed her was, here's how she put it: I decided that to recognize that God had made me female for a reason, and I wanted to honor my body by living in accord with the Creator's design. So it wasn't a matter of shame or guilt, as some people might think. It was a matter of honoring my body and living according to the Creator's design. And so that's the language I would suggest that we use on these issues like transgenderism and homosexuality, is the positive language of honor your body, respect your biological design, live in harmony with your body, live in accord with who you are physically.
Right, because the opposite is an uphill battle. You're going to be fighting for the rest of your life. You're going to be fighting against your natural state. And that's what a tremendous burden to have to fight against that for the rest of your life. I'm sure you're familiar with Walt Steyer, who, has done extensive research on this. And he was one of the early transitions because the doctors that he saw were, I think his word was perverts, who had decided to basically try some experimentation on living human beings. They thought it would be cool to operate and see what fun they could have. And he lived as a woman for, I think it was 8 years, and then he transitioned back. And now he fights on behalf of basically the same thing that you're putting forward, this honor yourself, honor your body, because your body is a part of you. And of course, the Christian perspective is that your body is a part of you. God came incarnate. That means in person, in physical form. There must be some importance to the physical form, or God wouldn't have bothered with all of that, right?
Right. What people don't realize is that when you claim a transgender identity, you are setting yourself up to become a lifelong medical patient.
Right.
It never ends. You are always on hormones, and most people do have to have multiple surgeries. People don't realize it's not just one surgery, multiple surgeries, especially for a male who transitions to female. It's not just bottom surgery. It's Adam Apple surgery. It's facial feminization surgery. It's getting rid of your facial hair. It never ends. And the sad thing is that 80 to 90% of young people who have gender dysphoria do end up, and in puberty, they end up reconciling with their biological sex. 80 to 90, 95%, depending on the study, end up, in fact, coming to grips with, coming into harmony with their biological sex. In fact, there was a recent study by Littman, Lisa Littman at Brown University. And she found that among young girls, it was mostly girls, among young girls who transition, who claim a transgender identity, already had additional mental health issues, such as autism, anxiety, depression, ADHD, self-harming, like cutting, and OCD. And I said autism. Autism is actually the most reliable correlate.
Wow.
And that's been known for a long time. Back when they used to call it transsexualism instead of transgenderism, they already knew that autism was the most reliable correlate. Nobody knows quite why, but they do know that that's the most reliable correlate. The point is, these are very troubled teens. These are troubled young people. They already, now, most teens have some anxiety and depression, right? That goes with the territory. But these were young people who had already been, the condition was so severe that their parents had already taken them into a therapist and they had already been diagnosed. And that was about 63%. 63% of young people who came out as transgender had prior psychological diagnoses. So this is what we have to realize. These are troubled kids, and in many places, cities and states have already passed ordinances saying that it is actually illegal to give these young people counseling. You are required to fast track them. And by the way, the Equality Act is before the US Senate right now, on the floor of the Senate right now, with only, last time I heard it was 2 votes, only 2 votes needed still to pass it. And if the Equality Act passes, it will be illegal across the entire nation to give these young people any kind of counseling to address their psychological issues.
Right.
It will be illegal.
Then it becomes really abusive. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'm going to host you over at sorbos.locals.com, which is our new platform. And we'll continue the conversation over there. So for those listening in radio, just a quick break here. And for the rest of you who want to hear the rest of the interview, where I will be asking her about things that Christian parents can do for their children with this coming onslaught, and also some questions about our military. Join us at sorbos.locals.com. I'll be right back.